I'm Mark Bodman, Senior Product Manager here in the Data Foundations team. We're going to be talking about the Utah release of the CSDM, CMDB, and Service Graph connectors. What we're going to be discussing today is a couple of major new features. We're starting with CMDB 360. This is available in the November store release and in Utah. The IH-ETL IRE support for all tables. These are tables outside of the typical CMDB. They're not CI records, but we're now able to support non-CI records in the IH-ETL reconciliation jobs that we support. These include things like your own connectors or using the Service Graph connectors available in the store. It's also supported in our discovery processes. The minor new features we're going to cover today are CMDB Workspace, enhanced navigation capabilities, some new features there and changes. We're going to be discussing a new cloud versus non-cloud CI visibility view that's available in our workspace. And last but not least, we're going to be covering Service Graph connector updates. We now have 38 connectors available in the store, and we're going to be bringing you up to date on what's available this quarter. IRE and IH-ETL now supports the tables of all sorts outside the CMDB, not just for CIs anymore. And this is just an example here on the screen where we have common locations. So these are the non-CI records here that we can bring in. It gets processed through the IRE engine and can be used in IH-ETL, just like any other CI. Now, this improves reconciliation and deduplication processes for information when ingested, just like CIs from different sources. So locations may come from multiple sources, users, things like that, which are frequently integrated into the platform, but aren't necessarily CIs that need to be reconciled with various sources into one record on our platform. This is just part of the Utah release, and it does require Utah. There are some steps to set up. We'll cover that in a minute. Customers now can ingest that data using the same robust features that CMDB has. This eliminates a lot of what I would call the hassle of duplicate records in location tables, for example, and it just applies some of the same robust features of CMDB ingestion to any table on the platform. Now, a couple things to note is that we have support this in the multi-source feature, CMDB 360, which we're going to be going through in a minute. And this is going to improve the data health for all non-CI situations using mature CMDB features. So here's how the product feature works. The very first step is you have to add the tables you want included in this feature to a system property. So if you can't read that, that's fine. I'll show that to you in another screen where we get into a little bit more detail. But once you add those tables to this system property, what you find is you have to go through and start setting up the CI identifiers. Now, this is a little bit of a misnomer because these aren't necessarily CIs that you're adding, but we use the same process as the CMDB. So they're kind of mixed in with the CMDB CIs. You set up the identifier. You can choose the identifier for what CI. Again, this is a table, not just a CI. But once you go here, you identify what do you use in that table as a unique identifier. Then you set up your related record entries. And in this case, we are using only reference fields. The CMDB CI relationships aren't really valid. These aren't CIs, but we can choose any reference field in this process. In this case, for locations, we want to see those in a hierarchy. So we can choose its parent. Last step, and where you start seeing that show up now, is an IH-ETL. When you set up a ingestion source and identifying how it maps to CIs, you basically choose your class, just like any other class. Although it's not a class, this is just a common table, but it's treated just like anything else in IH-ETL, where we are able to reconcile the data and the proper rules are in place for reconciliation and related entries. Now, this is a fact sheet to talk a little bit more about why we added this. We find that customers are struggling to bring that data in to these common foundational fields in a very similar way that we find CMDB CIs. They may have user tables, for example, in Workday in Active Directory where they want to bring in information from both sources and then merge them into the same user records. So those are all kind of done now. And we have in the middle, how we activate this is just upgrade to Utah. And by default, we provide the configuration of the tables supported out of the box for these listed locations, departments, cost centers, buildings, users, and the group tables. There is no license implication. However, you do need to use ITOM visibility for multi-source. So to use this feature, you do need multi-source enabled and ITOM visibility. Who to target for this feature right now is any customer really that has information coming in from multiple sources that need to be merged into these foundational tables. The technical things to note, this is the name of the system property that needs the target tables added. So again, by default, the ones above are going to be in there upon Utah install or upgrade. The relationship support is irrelevant here. You will not see those options when you go configure those related entries. You'll only see references available. And another thing to note is that if you are using multi-source to bring in data from multiple sources, we can now see those in the CMDB 360 feature, which we'll cover in a moment. Now, the before picture here is customers without this feature really struggle to keep that foundational data accurate and make sure that there's no duplicate information created inadvertently. Poor data quality, of course, here in users or common tables like locations could cause issues with other products even outside the CMDB. So this is a more powerful thing with IH-ETL features being used to deduplicate and make sure that information coming in from multiple sources is properly merged into these common tables. Now let's go cover the CMDB 360 feature. This is the new multi-source data reporting and analytics user experience that's been added to the CMDB Workspace. The key thing that we added here is a new option at the top, and you can see some of the details about what the CMDB 360 provides right there in the picture. So what this provides now is that reports are out of the box for the multi-source reporting that most customers need to, without having to go through any additional configuration. What we've identified is certain reports that any customer using multi-source would want to see. There's also an opportunity to customize and create new queries and reports, but out of the box, they should be able to get up and running very quickly. This is shipped in the November CMDB Workspace update, which is a version 3.1, or it's available in the Utah upgrade. This helps customers troubleshoot issues when creating multiple trusted data sources that are being ingested at the same time and merged into the CMDB. And again, now that IH-ETL does support non-CI records, we are able to leverage the same capabilities to identify, for example, multiple source data from our users or locations. Basically, this is a new user experience in the CMDB Workspace to see this information. So that is required, the new experience in the workspace. We can easily identify those issues such as missing CIs in those sources, discrepancies between those sources such as missing CI attributes or discrepancies in those attributes. And you can have a summary of those sources all in one view. So let's go through how some of these features work. So what you find here now on the new experience, and we'll go over the new workspace experience because that did change as well in the November release. Up at the top, you'll see a new option, which is for the CMDB 360. It's important to note that this option will not appear unless you have multi-source enabled. So, that feature needs to be there and turned on for this option to even appear. What you see next is potential issues that are identified right at the beginning. CI is not reported by certain discovery sources, how many, and then data mismatches within those sources, between those sources. What you see down below there is the discovery source summary, all the different sources. We'll go into this in a bit more detail on the next page. Over on the right, you'll find saved queries. Here you can create custom queries. We've got 3 default types we'll explore here in a minute, but those are queries you can specify to have very specific, narrow focus on what's going on in terms of certain CIs or certain attributes you want to look at. And there are some easily configured parameters that you need to take note of when you do set this up, and those are available right there in the settings tab. What you can set up and change and keep note of are the number of records by default that will show up in these reports. We only set this for 100,000. Take caution in expanding that too widely because of performance impacts that might occur. Unreported CIs are defaulted for 3 days. So if you do have a discovery job, for example, that runs every 5 days, you want to maybe adjust this to maybe 5 days or longer. You also want to include any CIs and attributes that are used in the difference check. So if there is a data mismatch, right, you're going to need to specify that in order to make that data mismatch element on the middle pop up with data. So you do need to configure that. And there's a coverage chart we'll cover in the middle in a minute, but we have to understand and configure what CIs to include in that coverage chart. By default, we only include a few. You want to make those adjustments as well. So some other features, if you go further down in the front page, you have here the discovery source summary. And what we're finding here is the number of discovery sources overall. The next item is the number of records that appear from all of those discovery sources in total, in aggregate, since a period of time, over a period of time. And then the last thing you want to look at here is the number of CIs that are created and reconciled from all those discovery records. There will always be more records than the number of CIs. This just gives you an idea of how the funnel is working from the different sources coming back into those specific CIs. Below that, you'll see the discovery source overview where you can drill down into the data per source. This gives you the raw CI data and source data that you can further use for investigating issues and just validating what's there. On the right-hand side, you'll see the coverage, and there you can configure that per the previous screen. It defaults again to 100,000 CIs, and so you do need to understand, in this case, you've got 3 sources that are included in that report. You can change that, and you can see the number of CIs broken down. The next feature that's pretty cool, I think, and that's the ability to create custom queries and reports. So here you have on the right hand, the main dialog, this saved query section. And in there, you can choose to create a new query to add to it. And here we have 3 custom types of queries that can be added. The first one is a view data view of the actual CIs. In this case, you select the classes, the discovery sources, and then there's some layouts, like choices that you can make. But this just gives you the raw data about what's coming in from those sources. And if you have teams that are interested in one or a different CI class, for example, or set of CI classes, you can tailor these queries for them and come back and use those at any time. The next type of report that you can create is a gap analysis. This basically identifies where you have CIs coming in from one source, but maybe not another that you expect it to be there. This helps to troubleshoot discrepancies between those sources in terms of maybe a client connect collector was not enabled, or you have an agent that wasn't installed on certain computers, or if you have jobs that aren't running from those sources. So this gives you sort of a broader view of what the gaps are in terms of what CIs are coming in from each of those sources. The last report here gives you an attribute level comparison between sources. So when you set up reconciliation rules and you start to merge that data from various sources, you may want to explore what is the actual data coming in and be able to set those rules up properly. So this actually allows you to generate a report that compares those sources and the attributes in order to understand what's really coming in so that those sources can be adjusted. Yeah, what we find, for example, is sometimes attribute formatting or some different ways of expressing IP addresses can cause issues with how the information is merged together in the subsequent jobs, IRE or IH-ETL. couple things to note as well. As of Utah, there is a feature to schedule these jobs. So when you go into the query parameters, you can choose at what time do you want to schedule these and have them run a daily, monthly, or whatever frequency you like. So quick fact sheet, why we added this? Well, a lot of customers that do have multiple sources, we're finding that most customers that ingest information aren't just using discovery and client collector, but they're also using service graph connectors and other sources that need to be merged in. And they're needing to understand the nature of that data coming in and how the CIs are being created from it. So with this capability, they are able to now have that visibility out of the box, time to value, of course, to be able to adjust things as their sources change or things go awry. So this just gives you a lot of power in visualizing that data. To activate this, it's available on the Workspace in November. So in November, update of the CMDB Workspace on 3.1 in Tokyo, patch 6 or above is required, or a Utah upgrade. Next, you also need to enable that multi-source property. Without that property, it won't be enabled and you won't see the 360 tab in the user experience. The CI attributes also need to be configured. Otherwise, the attribute overview will not have any data. So license implication for this feature to appear, multi-source needs to be enabled, and therefore ITOM visibility licenses needs to be there as well. Who to target on this particular feature is any customer who ingest data from multiple sources, which I'm finding most do. Most have an existing element manager that they can leverage pretty quickly with a service graph connector. We have 38 out of the box. And they may also have discovery. So there's multiple sources of data across the board from what I've seen. From a technical point of view, we also wanted to point out that the non-CI data is supported as of Utah with the IRE for all and the expansion of the IH-ETL processes to non-CI data. It leverages PA, and there's no license requirements, however, because everything is out of the box, these reports that are used. If you do want to create custom reports, of course, you may be subject to PA licensing, but everything you use out of the box here within this feature is no license required. Some jobs are going to be needed to be enabled, and that's just a setup process, and just make sure that they are enabled. Otherwise, those summaries won't be populated. And we're also processing data in the global domain. So the CIs are going to be needed in the global domain for them to show up. The before picture really is that customers with multiple sources took a long time in order to view what's going on, troubleshoot issues, and be able to find those gaps or compare data sources. This is now much easier. Time to value for implementing this multi-source data and sources is much faster, and troubleshooting those issues is much, much faster. Creating customer reports is also much more streamlined. Previously, that took a bit of knowledge of the underlying data structures in order to generate those reports. We've automated a lot of that work. So now with these three key types, it's much easier to create those customer reports. The next minor feature that I'd like to talk about, not so minor, but in the scheme of things, we've updated the navigation capabilities of the CMDB Workspace overall. And what you're seeing here on the left-hand side of the picture is a change to where the main navigation is now across the top. In previous releases, it was down across, it was on the left-hand bar, and so that's been changed. We've also made sure that the immediate things that needed to have action taken are right there in the front. Of course, this will change based on your particular role and what you have access to, but now that's front and center, so to speak. So you can, you don't have to scroll down or look for stuff that you need to do. It's right there in the front. We've also got a health summary overview right here, so you keep tabs on how healthy that your CMDB CI data is. And then, of course, we have all of what's new in this section here. And this is a summary of the new CIs created, not what's new in the platform or anything like that, but what kind of CIs came in the last period of time. So the key thing here is that we always refactor the user experience based on the feedback our customers give us. It is part of the CMDB Workspace in the store. Tokyo patch 6 or greater, or in the CMDB Workspace in the Utah release. Overall, it improves the experience, makes the CMDB much more streamlined and useful for any role that requires access to CMDB data. The other couple things I wanted to also add is that we also added a feature for customizing intelligent search examples. So the intelligent search feature was added in a previous release, but now those examples that come out of the box can be tailored to situations that are more common in each organization. We've also exposed search term tables in order to adjust search terms that you are maybe using in your organization that might not be provided out of the box. So those intelligent search phrases can be better interpreted and matched up to CIs that we do provide. And one last thing I wanted to kind of note is that we have also renamed one of the tabs that we provided previously at Attestation to governance. We will be increasing the amount of attention given on governance features. And so this is just one step along that journey. And so if you couldn't find Attestation, it's under that governance tab. The next thing I want to talk about is our cloud versus non-cloud CI visibility capabilities that we've added in this release as well. So what we added is out-of-the-box pre-configured queries that allow you to see your cloud data versus non-cloud data. This is part of the Workspace version 3.3 in the store for Tokyo or in the Utah upgrade. We just continue to make more changes to our user experience based on customer feedback, and segregating what CIs are coming from a cloud source versus a non-cloud source is a little tricky. You have to understand that data model, but now it's much easier with these out-of-the-box canned reports, and you can drill into the data as necessary to further look at the details. So a couple things that you'll see here is that the cloud versus non-cloud resources is just part of the CI overview here that you see in the middle. When you click on this selection, you'll see each of the CIs as two columns, cloud versus non-cloud. You can also look at the last updates that came in terms of the cloud versus non-cloud data that you're receiving on your ingestion sources. So whether it's Cloud Discovery or one of the Service Graph connectors, you can see when that last was refreshed. A couple of things to note down at the bottom is that you need a number of tables that are established, the service account, the data center, and the data center type. Those are automatically created and set up when you install and use Cloud Discovery, or you use a Service Graph connector connecting to a cloud resource. Those are just something to note. The other thing that you can do is add your own data center types for private cloud or cloud resources that you create or that we don't provide out of the box. There are instead scheduled jobs that need to be running to generate these results. They are requiring that scheduled job, so they aren't real time, but they're up to date as to when the scheduled jobs run. Now, one thing I wanted to cover, which is coming out just after our Utah release in our May store release, and that is a new feature called Unified Map. This unified map basically will replace our dependency view in the legacy user experience. This unified map works in the new workspace paradigm, so you do need to have the workspaces enabled and installed to see this. It's built basically for the next experience, and the components of unified map, it's taken a little while to develop this, but the components in that unified map are going to be used across the board in other products that we provide. One of the products, for example, is service maps, and then we're going to see that also come along after the May release. It's a common component that's going to be used in service maps as well. We're targeting that May store update. It really required Utah. It does not work on a previous release. And it's intended to be tailored for all those different personas and use cases as future products need it. So just keep in mind that that user experience will change and evolve, but it is a common component, visual component, and we're making it very, I would say, configurable for various use cases across the platform. So some of the things you can do, of course, is visualize the relationships. And as you select a particular node, you can see the CI properties on the right-hand side here that are displayed. And that's can be configured as well. So you can display all the properties or just some, that's really up to the situation and the use case. And in some cases, you can display related alerts, very similar to what you have in the current dependency views that you see today on the previous user experience. So here we're just getting, we're planning to bring a lot of what you have out of the box in the old experiences into the workspaces. This is your first big step, and it's coming in May. So really excited about this, and we're really looking forward to getting feedback and continuing to evolve this capability. The last thing I'd like to cover is a Service Graph connector update, and those are things that we've had now up through Q1 of 2023. To provide a summary here, what we have is in the networking space, we've gone general availability for the Azure Cloud Service Graph connector. So that's new. It's been on early access for a long time. That's also general available now. We've added Alibaba and HashiCorp clouds to our plans. We continue to add new connectors in our backlog as customers demand them and as we see that demand grow. We added a number of connectors to our plans in server and networking, such as VMware, Red Hat Insights, and Cortex Expanse. Palo Alto is also now GA, and Infoblox is now in early access beta. So if you do need that and it's not available to you, just ask us and we can enable that for you. In the telecom space, we now have Clarity in GA, and Eno6 is also in GA, general availability. We also added a few more to our plans, such as Cisco's CyberVision and Azure Defender for IoT. So we continue to add more. This is a fluid roadmap, and what I suggest is for anybody interested or that uses Service Graph connectors, that you go to our store, and in the upper left-hand side of the store login, you will see an option to change your subscriptions. If you subscribe to the configuration management database, you'll get updates when any of these connectors change or new ones are added. So just keep that in mind. And this year, we will be ramping up a better communication and messaging around our Service Graph connectors in general. We find a lot of customers really like these connectors. Some reports of connectors installed from download to production is only 7 days. So the time to value in using these connectors is starting to get really great. Customers are really screaming and clamoring for more data sources and updates to these connectors as we continue to grow the number we support. Like I said, we've got 38 now, and we plan to have another 15, I think it is, throughout the next year or so. So it's a quickly expanding list of partners that we have connectors for. And the key thing to remember also with Service Graph connectors, they are ServiceNow tested and supported, even if they're developed by a partner. We also make sure that the multi-source reconciliation is used properly, so that's covered. And also they are CSDM compliant. So we're putting data in the right place, where maybe some of the older connectors that predated CSDM did not follow the rules or what we have provided in that guidance. Thank you very much for attending this update. I hope you have a great day